This is Abnormal Entertainment.
Mr. Big Dreams, no tolerance. Cut you at the house and have a holler sense. Get bored quickly. He stayed grown, so the Patron had to get poured quickly. Ex-girl stripping, I can't stop her. New girl tripping, but I can't drop her. Cause I need something to balance out the fact that it's hard to find a woman when you talented and black.
Hey everybody, good morning. This is Daniel Garza. Welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers. Thank you, sir, for everything you do. Inviting everybody to join us over at abnormalentertainment.com for all the shows on the network. Check them out. Every day there's something new on there. If you'd like to follow me, you can check me out at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. My handle is at Little Mexican, LILMESICAN. Go check it out. There's all kinds of cool stuff, new information almost every day. Behind the scenes stuff, things about my guests, things about me, just random shots. Go check it out. There's a bunch of stuff out there. Today, I'm pretty excited. There's not a whole lot of people I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning for, but this dude was kind of interesting. I kind of stalked him a little bit yesterday, like I do most of my guests. He's out in Florida. Coach PJ, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Daniel. How you doing?
I'm doing well. And just to give people a little eyes view of who you are the owner of Just Keep Going Fitness out there in Deltona, Florida?
That's
correct?
Right. Exactly. Correct.
How are things out in Florida?
It's beautiful. Living the dream. Compared to where I'm from, I can say that I had my doubts about Florida, but I've come to see it as a blessing and definitely appreciate it. So life is good.
Well, the way that I see it from the times that I've been in Florida, there's two types of people out there. There's crazy people and there's old people. So you either one or the other.
Yep, I'm the crazy one.
You're the crazy one, I coach. That way I know how to take this conversation. Either way you have to talk really slow and make sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm so glad that you could be on the show. But let's start. Coach PJ, tell us how you put it together.
Well, I want to start because I think it's always a great way to reach the youth. And I've always wanted an opportunity to hopefully, if anyone out there is listening, like young adults, and just kind of start from a little bit from my childhood, which kind of set the background for where we're going to be going today. And that starts in Connecticut. And I don't know if you've ever been to Connecticut, but, it's not too far from New York in the tri-state area, New Jersey. I mean, it's, I tell people it's the same as New York. The buildings don't go as high. Got a little bit more woods sometimes, depending where you go. So I think we get this rap that, when you're from Connecticut, that means like you have money or that you're rich. And it's not like that. I can't say that I grew up in a horrible neighborhood, but I think I had a fascination for what I was seeing on TV. And the influences that I had led me down that path that I originally went down, which was a bad path. I was the kid that was on the outskirts of the inner city, wanting to go into the inner city, had no business being there. We weren't by any means dirt poor, but we weren't, I wouldn't say, coasting in the middle class either. So life wasn't easy. But I definitely found myself venturing to those areas and, wound up getting into a lot of trouble. And I think for me, my turning point to get away from all that, it wasn't, I didn't learn my lesson very easily. And I think that, it's important for me to just outline it. My dad wasn't there for me. He wasn't there for me growing up. So I always try to keep in hindsight that I don't use that as an excuse. So right. I was, wrong side of the tracks. I was doing things I wasn't supposed to do. I was getting in trouble with the law, in and out with drugs, fights, things like that. And I'd say about 18 to 19 is, 18 is probably when I changed. And it was that story I can go all day on. But basically, I had this experience. You can say that maybe it was God or, it was a sign, maybe foreshadowing of where I really wanted to go. I just got this feeling of like, I started to have a conscience, and I didn't really think about a lot of the things that I did when I was a kid and the bad things that I was getting involved in. And I started to realize that this wasn't who I wanted to be. It was the first time I started thinking about things like that.
So you were about 18, 19 when you started making your beeline for a better life. What can you? I know we have a long story to tell, but can you was there something that you did or something that somebody did for you that you were like, oh crap, I really got to change my ways? Because 18 or 19 is really young for somebody to have a aha moment. But what was it an aha moment?
Absolutely. I think what was important about what had led up to that was, like I said, I've in and out of jail a couple times for drugs and fighting. I had a lot of people that I knew pass away, probably about 5 or 6 people that I knew very close to me. So here we are just getting out of high school and all this death is around and I'm hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I come home one day from us doing something that I wasn't too proud of. And we got into an altercation with a group of people. And typically, any other day, it wouldn't have been anything that I worried about or cared about because at that point, my mindset was totally in the opposite direction. Hated life, was always angry, had a chip on my shoulder. And I came home from that altercation, remember thinking like, wow, that they didn't deserve what we did. It was a bad fight. Now, it wasn't like, people ended up in the hospital, but, at the end of the day, it was the first time that I ever walked away from an altercation thinking like, that's not right. And I didn't know how to process that.
Okay.
And it just happened that same night, I had this weird experience where I woke up and I couldn't breathe. And, some people believe me, some people don't. And I saw this shadow, like this dark figure by the side of my bed, just eerie stuff. So I'm awake, though. My eyes are open. I can't move. It felt like this pressure just on top of my chest.
Yeah.
I could barely move. Just enough to know that I was being held down. So my first thought is I'm being attacked by somebody. And what really, again, whether it was a dream or not, whatever, it felt as real as day. I remember everything, every detail. And I remember getting to the point where we're about 30, 40 seconds in, right? It's like the longest 30, 40 seconds of my life that I can't breathe. I'm looking at the side to the corner, and I see this dark figure here in my room. I'm confused, and I just started figuring, you're going to die. This is how you're going out. This is This is the end. Is there anything that you want to think of before you're done? Because another 20 seconds, I can hold my breath about a minute, and we're done. And I remember thinking about all the things I didn't do, all the people that I loved. And I remember thinking the last thought was, you weren't a good person.
Wow.
Then at that point, I started to basically, I had no breath left, so I'm dry heaving, trying to gasp and breathe in what little air was available. And it was like I took my last breath and I said in my head, I love Jesus. And it stopped immediately. I shot up, was able to breathe. I'm looking around the room. I totally freaked out, ran out of the house. Didn't want to accept that it was real or a dream. I tried every way to explain what could have happened.
Right.
And I kind of ignored it. I didn't revisit that till years later, to kind of sift through what that all really meant and what that was. But what the important part that I took from it was the first time I ever acknowledged the existence of God in that way, in Jesus. And I think that the really important part of it was I said to myself what I was hiding or didn't want to admit, that real statement of you weren't a good person. And that conscious thought that I had prior to all that happening, it just started this ball in motion of you've got to change. And it almost, one thing that I attribute to my success today is it made me feel like you're behind the ball. Like you could be farther than where you are even right now because you know better. And that's why you're so wrong for the things that you've done. Like, better. It's one thing when someone robs and they think that, that's the way of life and, they have to do these things because that's the only choice they have. I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I still went forward and did it. And a lot of times knew the ramifications of what might happen. And it just drove me to start saying, hey, I've got to change. So now we're about 18 to 20, and, which we're going to like crash course right into like what we're talking about. So here I am. I've got this aha moment that I've woken up from, like, what are you doing? This isn't how your parents raised you. This isn't the example or the person that you want to be. And all in the midst of all this death and all these people that I'm now connected with that are bad news, doing bad things. And how does one change? It's a lot of things to undertake I think as a kid, or even as a 19-year-old, becoming an adult. And I just couldn't cope. It was like, I'm trying to change, but I don't really know how to change.
Right.
What steps I should be taking. And then here I have like the people that are still my friends that I'm realizing these aren't good people. They're trying to hold me back, because they're, trying to say, hey, what's going on? They don't know I've had this epiphany. I'm not sharing it with anybody. I'm just trying to make sense of like, how do I move forward and not lose friends? So I'm caught up in all this. And I just got to a point where I couldn't deal. And I remember my first experience with suicide was actually, I don't know that everyone always thinks that right away when they think suicide. But, my first failed attempt was trying to drive my car into a tree,
Wow.
And my poor mom on the other line of the phone having to hear me in such despair. And it was a lonely place. It was just so overwhelming. And at that point, it was like me struggling with the failure of trying to be good, but still failing and not being able to internalize.
Before you go into the suicide part, I just wanted to make a note that from where I'm listening, it seems like you were going through like a recovery process. People quit drugs cold turkey, people quit alcohol or cigarettes. You quit being bad cold turkey. And that requires a recovery process. That is a 12-step program per se that you have to go through, and without anybody guiding you or helping you and not being able to share with anybody, it's like any other recovery, people, places, and things. You were surrounded by the same people. You were in the same place, in the same things. So it's very difficult to separate yourself from the old you to the new you that you want to become. And let me just, disclaimer here. If any show is the right show to talk about spiritual stuff and, shadows, this is the right show to come to. So, and we'll talk about that probably in another episode or off the air. But it totally makes sense. I just wanted to make sure that people understood that when you decide to make a spiritual, a soul change, a conscious change, it is a step-by-step process. It's very difficult to just say, okay, I'm going to be good now. But if you don't change your environment, it's going to be very difficult. So, I can understand why your brain would go, I don't know where I fit in now. I probably don't fit in the world anymore. And suicide was like the best option, I guess.
I was a hot mess. I didn't know what way was up or down because, like you said, you have, your homeboys, saying, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. And you're like, well, I don't have anybody positive to hang out with. And at that time, that's what I needed. I just didn't know that's exactly what I needed and how that, even using that wording, I probably wouldn't even have said it that way. But I'm getting pulled back by old habits. We're creatures of habit. So I'm trying to figure out, like you said, how do I operate now with this new set of beliefs that I'm trying to put forward? But this has been my world for so long. It was to the point where I had people that in a way feared me for some of the things that I did. Now, I don't want to make it like, I'm walking around town like, oh, he's doing all these crazy things that everybody fears him. But there was a certain level of some of the circles that I ran in where people did fear, okay, I know who he knows. And, so here I'm caught in this world trying to do the right thing and trying to change. And, failure and rejection has always been a big thing for me to overcome. And I'd had no coping skills. My way of dealing with things was just to get mad. well, what do you do when you decide, like, I don't want to be mad anymore? That was my defense. So now it's like, it was like a wreck loose cannon. Like, I didn't know if I was going to try to fight somebody or go to the lengths that I did. I can't say that I ever planned it, you know, because it's interesting when you look at some of the numbers. 3.7%. It's not a lot, but 3.7% of the U.S. population, and people think, oh, well, that's just a small number. I don't think people realize it's 8.3 million people.
Wow.
That have thoughts of suicide just in the past year. When you bundle that 1% of the population, which is 2.3 million people, they develop a suicide plan. And that's, you know, that's a lot of people who have not only just thought about it, but have actually said, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to kill myself, this is how I'm going to do it. And 1 million people attempt it. So that's 0.5%. So you don't think that 0.5% is a lot, but that's still 1 million people a year. And I'm sure that those numbers may not be accurate anymore. They could be rising. So for me, you know, I think a huge thing for me is that I didn't plan it, and I didn't really think of it that way. I really just got to that point where I couldn't deal. And like you said, that seemed like the best option, because I didn't want to face the fears, the failure, the rejection, or any of it. And, you know, that failed attempt, thank God, and my poor mom having to go through that. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be on the other side and, you know, be dealing with a loved one who's going through that, adult or young adult. You know, you sometimes can maybe feel helpless in those situations. And I guess I attribute the curb for being as high as it was because it just stopped my car from going where I intended it to go. And that was the first time I actually I let go totally and was like, I'm doing this.
Let me ask you a little bit, because just to paint the picture for people who don't understand, for those millions of people, and I'll raise my hand, and that group of people who have like devised a plan, like, what would be the best way to do this where I could still have an open casket and like, and it's like, if it were pills, how would I not let them know which pills I took? Or how could I turn the gas on in my apartment without blowing up the other apartments in my building? Like there is a low that I've gotten to, especially like when I was going through cancer, that I was like, how can I make this just not seem like I was chickening out or I was tapping out of life, or because it I don't know, and I'll let you tell your story, but at that point for me, such a rock bottom, it wasn't like I was giving up. It's just like there's no more options, and your brain is so shut down. It's kind of like the horses, the siders. Is that what they call it? Siders? Anyway, the blinders. Horses and blinders.
Yeah.
And there is no other way to look but forward, and forward is the only thing that there's a little evil monster in front going, you know what you got to do. Like, you know what you got to do. And you're like, yeah. And the bad thing about the blinders is that as much as they block you from seeing out, it blocks you from seeing anybody trying to get in to help you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I pushed everybody away with my anger. That was my number one excuse. You know, I just made something that, you know, I'd get angry about it, and that would be my way of just getting people away from, you know, what was really going on. And I think absolutely it's when you say you run out of options, you feel like there is no alternative. Like, I can't do anything else. And I think part of it for me, you know, like I said, it was not wanting to face fears. I did not want to accept anything but what I wanted. And when I didn't see that, it became very overwhelming. And I, you know, had a lot of expectations for myself that I think were a little unrealistic. And I just mounted more of the pressure, and it just kept taking it on. And, you know, that first, you know, time, you know, was you would think that it would have been enough to make an impact. And you know, I just bowled right over it, just like another episode, and didn't really think that I had a problem, you know, and it's taken all this time and to hear about it, and as an adult to look back and say, well, I never associated myself with suicide until well, that's what that was. You have to like name that. Like you're wanting to bury that so much that, you need to talk about that and bring that to light. That's what it is. It was a suicide attempt. You did try to end.
I'm sorry. Can you, and if you want to, the first time that the plan took shape, it sounds so mysterious. It's not that mysterious. I mean, but the
I'll
first,
yeah,
yeah,
it's raining. I'm on a dark road. I went to a side road because I was at that point, I'm venting to my mom about some frustrations. I think I had lost 2 of my friends at that point. So I'm dealing with death. And it was a crazy emotional mess. So, at the end of the day, I'm thinking about what she must have thought. She couldn't even probably figure out what I was upset about. But it was just a multitude of all these emotions because I'm not trying to be mad. Now they're coming out and crying and being upset and frustrated. And it just got to be such a whirlwind that here I am on this dark road. It's raining. I'm bawling and screaming at the top of my lungs. And, as she's trying to like figure out what's going on, I'm getting more upset at her responses. And then I just get to the point where I can't deal anymore. And I just saw a tree and went for it.
wow.
While on the phone in the car and hit the curb, and it didn't damage the car too bad, but the curb was high enough to stop me from where I was trying to go. I sat there for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and went home and kind of just tried to forget about it, just try to bury it like, oh, nothing happened. I'm fine. I don't have a problem. That was we're just going to forget about that. Which
it was a manic moment.
Yeah, that's it. That's normal. People go through that all the time. And I say, when you were explaining some of the things that you were thinking about, it wasn't until later that I started to think about those things. So my first time, I never planned it, never thought anything of it. But you do go through that. And the only reason I can look back at it now and see how my behavior was and smile is because now I can deal with it. I'm like, what was I thinking, But it's a very real thing. And the second time that I executed on an attempt on committing suicide, I was, in a different place. I was about in my 20s. I think it was 2021, so it was about a year or two later. And I made progress, and I changed even more because, like you said, it's like a process, right? So it's like every time I got to the next level, it was a new playing field, and it's like it started the cycle all over again. So here I am improving, but not really seeing the progress that I want. And it's like you take 2 steps forward, you take a couple back, 2 forward. So going into my 20s, I was a lot better off than I was when I was 18. But again, the stress, trying to cope with everything. Now at this point, I'm out of high school, and I've lost about 12 or 14 people that I was close with in high school.
Oh, wow.
Where we lived is that there was a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking. So we had a lot of drunk driving, so I've lost some of my friends to drunk driving, lost some of my friends to overdoses. And that was the kind of world that we lived in. So it was like we're dropping like flies right out of high school. I've been to so many funerals that it was just like it got to the point where I started getting numb. I would just go and be there, and it was about like not showing emotion because you can't even handle it. You just buried someone last month, and now here goes another funeral, and some of them were just unfortunate circumstances. We don't know whether alcohol was involved or not. So just a lot of things going on.
Oh, you froze, Coach.
Trouble that I got into. Okay. It's like I lived triple lives. I was like 007. Some people knew me as a little bit of a class clown. Some people knew me as someone who did well in school. Some people knew me as an athlete. Some people knew me for some of the things I was doing on the street, with that bad crowd. And here I am trying to juggle all of this, coming out of a comfort zone of high school into the world now. Now here I am in college trying to to juggle this, and it was just a different world. They just didn't meet.
I think that's another interesting point to make, especially for anybody young that's listening, is high school is preparing you a little bit to go out into the real world somewhat. We don't think of it that way, but it's prepping you. And then if you're not prepared, if you don't pay attention, it's not just about learning math and biology. It's about learning to socialize and make decisions and decide what's wrong and right. That moves you for when you go to college, if that makes sense. But my real question for this is, you're seeing all these people, you're now in your 20s and you're trying to change your life and you're seeing all these people pass away. Any survivor's guilt?
Did you say any survivor skills?
Correct.
In terms of?
Like, why is everybody else dying? And here I am not wanting to be here. And like, when's my turn? I say that because I had friends who have died of AIDS complications, and I've known people who've died of cancer complications. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be here anymore. Why don't you take me and let them stay? Like, the bargaining with the higher power, like, dude, I'm tired. Just take me. And then feeling guilty that, like, I'm wanting to go and I'm still here and trying to figure out where that's supposed to go.
I think it sent me into a spiral, to be honest with you, because I felt responsible for some of my friends' deaths in a way for a long time. As kids, I have a friend that I'll never forget him. He's like a brother to me. His name is Alex. And we did so many things together, being curious and getting involved in things together. And I wouldn't say I showed him, but fostered that type of behavior. And I was the older one. So I always had taken that guilt of, if you had tried to make more of a difference and not have been this way or that. So I took on a lot of guilt, and my whole thought process on it was, what am I doing right? Why am I still here? That could have been me or any of those people. Maybe not with the overdosing on drugs, but, I could have been drunk driving. I had plenty of nights where I drank too much and I shouldn't have drove. And, or I took it too far in a fight or an altercation. And I said, what am I doing that's like that? And it just hit me that it could be anybody. And just as, here I am burying myself in work, because at that point, because, it's like a weird picture because I'm such, I think, different from what I normally see. I'm going to college. I hold two jobs, and I wanted to play soccer, but I didn't. So I felt this pressure even from that because the school gave me a scholarship academically and for psychology in hopes that I would play sports there. And I never did, but I felt pressured from that. So all these things just mounted up, and, the death thing was like the tipping point. That's what really, dealing with all the death and thinking to myself, why am I still here? What am I doing right? Just sent me into a further depression. And I just couldn't figure out, I started thinking, I don't deserve to be here. All the bad things that I've done, what do I deserve to have life? And some of these people that passed away were innocent and, were good people. So I think that thought process just spiraled into where I got. And, my second attempt at suicide was definitely a cry for help to who I don't know. I think it was a message to myself because I didn't want anybody to know. And I ended up cutting myself, and I didn't even know that there was a way that you need to do it for it to work. And I just a mess. And I remember thinking to myself, what am I doing? I just, I'm definitely afraid of needles and knives, but I had enough gusto to try to cut myself. And again, like I said, a failed attempt, and it was spur of the moment, reactive to the situations going on that you feel helpless. I wasn't happy, and I wasn't sure at that point what life was going to look for me. I had always thought I was going to be this world-class athlete. I was going to play soccer. I had played since I was small, and here I am in college not even doing that. Have every opportunity to do it, but I chose to work because I wanted money. And I wanted money because I thought money would bring me happiness. And I'd like to pay for my friends and things like that. So I valued that more. And it just contributed to this big spiral of like, is this what life is like? I'm looking forward to getting out of college to work and just do more of what I'm doing now. And I just remember feeling hopeless, like this can't be where I'm at. I felt stuck, like I have to work now because I've built up these bills and the things that I'm doing in the car that I have. So I can't break away with that and just go focus on school. I started to slip with my grades. So I ended up quitting school. I got discouraged on the path that I was going, which was for business development. I wanted to be a major in business management. And I gave up on everything. The only thing I didn't stop doing was going to work. But I almost lost the job. And that's where that second attempt came in. And it was, again, just like the first, I swept it under the rug. Like, it's just a moment. Nobody saw it. It's intimate. I don't have to admit, that I did that, and I just bowled right past it. And, but from that point, things actually started to turn around. And I had a lot of progress from that point on.
So there's so much in there that I'm like, kind of like.
It's such a long story. I just try to keep in mind like we have an hour. But yeah, there's so much in there that we can go into.
Okay, because now I'm lost because you're bringing up like little details about my personal life that I'm like, shit, like, yes, that.
Felt that way.
Yeah, right there. And I think that we don't talk about it, especially as dudes. No matter what your sexuality is, as dudes, we're like, no, I can do this myself, and I got this, and I can take care of it, and I can stop the world if I want to. And then when we can't, for those of us that go down that spiral, especially if there's been alcohol or drugs or bad influences in our life, like, how do I change my direction? Even when your direction's already been changed for you, like in your case, going to college, working and seeing a better life, it's still this hook that has you hold on to your past. And it's like, how do I let go of that? Was there, because the second attempt, and obviously you're still here. Otherwise, this is a very weird conversation. What was there ever a moment where you sat down and just kind of talked to God, to the universe, and said, "What's your plan for me? What the fuck do you want me to do?"
Yeah, no, that's the craziest thing. I didn't. I just kept going. All right, it happened. And what I didn't realize is that was really setting me up for where I'm actually at now. And I'm doing a lot of those things that I was doing that just didn't know what to call it. But I just sat there and said to myself, I kept telling myself that that's not me. So that might have been one of my saving graces because I didn't want to admit that I just did that. And at that point, it was almost like every time I had that release, it was like a release for me. It gave me just a moment of clarity to be like, hey, don't do that. No one has to know about that. Just let's try to keep figuring this thing out. I have, if anyone who knows me knows I'm pretty stubborn and I don't give up easily. So that was definitely working in favor. Thank God I didn't work it in the opposite direction.
Right.
And I just said, there's got to be more to life. And not realizing it, what I was saying, that I'm still open to changing more. Because every time you change, you think, okay, I've changed, I'm good now. And then you realize, I hit the next level. And then you hit there and you start realizing, like, okay, I can do more. I can do more to change. And where I was at that point was going through that mess in my 20s and that second attempt. I was trying to become this person that didn't want to be angry anymore, who has a natural way of just dealing things with anger. So my interactions socially with people were really messed up, and I couldn't really get around good people because when I did, I pushed them away. I would react in ways that just people don't typically react like. And why are you mad? It's breakfast. You just woke up. What do you have to be mad about? Kind of thing. So here I am walking around with this chip on my shoulder saying, I want to be a better person, with this scowl and this, like, you know, wall in front of me because I don't want to let anything in. I'm afraid, you know, because where I'm from, you don't want to show weakness, right? So if I show weakness, you might think that I'm a pushover. And then here we are, you know, I'm thinking the most radical thoughts that in 1 in a million shot won't happen. Like, if I don't act like a tough guy when I walk in the bar next time, somebody's going to think they can come up to me and start a problem, which is crazy. But it's the stories that we tell ourselves that end up driving the decisions that we make. And sometimes when that's made out of such emotion, you're just like, what are you doing? Slow down. It's cool. You're totally like over analyzing things. And that was me just trying to search for what way I needed to be. And, you know, sometimes I was too nice. Sometimes I wasn't nice enough. And I'm trying to figure out the balance.
Yeah. It sounds like what pops into my mind is like a jalapeno walking into a bar and going, I want to be sweet. And everybody's like, but you're a jalapeno.
Exactly like that. How are you going to achieve this? You haven't changed. I was only changing the outside. I had not changed the inside. So outwardly, things look good. I'm going to school. I got a job. You know, I'm not always looking like I'm stressing out with money, even though I was. Everything looks great on the outside, but on the inside, I was like, don't come here. I don't want anyone to know. Like, very guarded and like, I can't let anybody know about this stuff.
Was there like a fear of being weak? But then, because then it sounds like that weakness is what got you out of that hole. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. There was a fear of being vulnerable. I couldn't be vulnerable. Number one, that was like not in my vocabulary. No, definitely not. And showing weakness was something that I couldn't handle. It was just, I always had to like put this front up. So I think that played a huge part in sometimes keeping me there, because I didn't want to, like I said, let anybody in to see that side of me or look at me in a way. There was a fear of rejection big time, and not being able to handle, what if this person doesn't like you? You know, back then it was like, no, I can't, this person has to like me. You know, I'm a good person. But you're like, yeah, but you just, you know, beat somebody up the other day. You know, so he's trying to struggle with it. Now, fast forward to my 20s, though, it wasn't like me beating. It was like you yelled at someone in the parking lot the other day for no good reason, because you were mad and you were drinking. But you're not beating people up. Like, we're doing a lot better, right? We're not doing crazy things. But you're not quite hitting the mark, because you're having road rage. You're, you know, getting mad at people, and you're not, you know, still working on things.
Yeah. I'm still a jalapeno, but I'm a sugar-coated jalapeno.
Like, I got to figure out where I can, you know, get up in here and fit in, you know. That's why it's, when you say trying to fit in, yeah, I was definitely trying to see how I could fit in. But like I said, my mindset was just in the wrong place. I'm sitting here telling me I want good things, but I'm just still with this negative attitude about everything.
So what was the one, because it had to have been a good thing that came into your life and you said, I'm letting this one in. No questions asked.
The thing that I let in, I have to say that after that attempt, and my mom and my sister moved to Florida, so here I'm still in Connecticut, being a year or 2 years by myself, you know, going through holidays without the family, that really resonated with me. And I finally gave in to this idea that, because before this, I would say it, but I didn't believe it. I don't care what people think, but I did. I really, like, at my heart of things, I was making decisions based on what other people thought. And at this point, I said, I've got nothing to lose. I want to be with my family. I'm going to move to Florida. And I had a successful business doing landscaping. I was making money, but it wasn't worth not having my family. I finally realized how important family was, and allowed myself to be vulnerable in asking, look, how can we make this happen? Because, you know, once I sell this, that, I need help. And they helped me make it happen. I had to sell my dog. I had to get rid of my dog to go down to Florida. And I just remember, like, I'm scared beyond belief. Here I am at a place where I can be at a club after hours, and I know people, and anything I need is at my disposal, but they're all the wrong people to know. So I was like, you know what? This is my chance at a new beginning. I'm going to leave here, and I'm going to leave everything that, I hate about me and everything that I hate about where I'm at. I'm going to leave it in Connecticut, and I'm going to start fresh in Florida. And I remember when I got to Florida and I looked out my first day, felt like I couldn't breathe. I'm like, I don't see other houses. Where are all the other houses? I'm on this street, and I only see what's on this street. No mountains, no look down into the valley or looking up at, the houses on the hills. It was just straight flat, just 6 houses you can see on this side and 6 on that side. That's it. So I remember this feeling of oh my God, I'm so out of my comfort zone. I had never done that before. And I was like, all right, well, let's make this an impactful change. And from there, it was really good growth period where I got a job. I bought a house. By the time I was 25, I had a house, I had a good career. I say decent career. I wasn't happy, but it was a decent career, making money, because I thought that's what we need to do, is just make money and everything will be okay.
Right.
So things were really good. I can't complain. There was a lot of growth in that period. I learned a lot about myself. And even in that period before I hit 25, I also started to gravitate towards bad people again. I found myself in a couple bad situations in Florida, and just had this sit down with myself and said, listen, you're 24 or 23 at the time, going to be 24. You have to grow up and do you want jail-free future, or because you've worked so hard to get away from this, and here you are, it feels like, 3 years and then boom, something else happens. You have to stop. It's time to man up and stop running from everything. And I just said in my head, I'm not going to go that route. I'm so set on, if that means I'm a punk, I'm a pussy, whatever you want to call me. If that's what it is, I'm ready to take that as a man and say, whatever, call me whatever you want. That is my bottom line. I didn't have a bottom line.
Right.
I was trying to find one but then I finally established, that's the line on the sand. I draw a line in the sand there. I'm not going to go past that point. I'm done with any of that kind of stuff.
It sounds like what most people don't realize is, because you just said it, things were happening, but in reality, we make things happen. There wasn't just this group of bad people walking down the street, knocking on people's doors, have you found trouble today? Let me tell you about our Lord Satan. And you're like, yeah, come on in.
Yeah.
We go out and seek the trouble because we're bored, because we think we can push the line, or we're doing so well that one bad thing isn't going to ruin anything. But we go seek it. So you're having this conversation with yourself, which I always think it's a moment of meditation. It's a moment of prayer. It's a moment with the universe going, okay, something's got to give. I'm willing to.
You really want this, but everything you're doing is driving you to this.
Yeah, because it's a negotiation.
Yeah.
We're basically negotiating with ourselves, with the universe, with God, with whomever, and going, okay, trouble seems to go everywhere I go. What's the common denominator here? And it's hello?
Well, I had this epiphany, which is really just was always there in front of me. I said, and I would even argue with people. I say, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. All my friends say the same thing. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. It's simple. They'll sit with me and they see I'm a good person and yada, yada, and I'm building myself up. And then I say, they're the first ones to say, why do these bad things happen to you? You were just sitting there, minding your business, and for whatever reason, the big guy pointed you out. So, and what was going on in the background is law of attraction in reverse. Secretly, I'm sitting there I wish motherfucker would say some shit to me. And the universe said, that's powerful and strong. There you go. Motherfucker said some shit to you. What are you going to do now? And then it was, but they would notice dude, every time it's just something happens. Like, you're not doing anything. Like, and they were affirming it's not your fault. It's totally cool.
Right.
So I'm great. You know,
Yes.
I have my excuse. When I do something I know I'm not supposed to do, I'll just chalk it up to like, I can't help it. It's not my fault, but I'm going to keep trying. And that was where I was at that impasse, where that was the first time I started to take responsibility and didn't realize that's what I was doing. I said, no. You have to control this. This is the sand. This is the line in the sand. It can't happen anymore. Like, you have to take ownership of, you know, the cop. It's like, oh, it's not my fault. The cop pulled me over because I was drunk. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing wrong. I mean, what do you expect? You're gonna, it's not my fault. Yeah. So that's where my mind was really at. We really try to convince ourselves the story that we tell ourselves.
And you know why your friends do that? It's because they've been knocked on the door by the same people. Excuse me, have you found trouble today?
Yeah.
We'd like to talk to you about trouble. Yeah.
I started on that path, and you know, at that point, I said, I became more conscious and more alert of what I was doing. I was still like on this little, you know, I just found the tip of the iceberg. And what I didn't realize, I started using techniques like law of attraction. And, you know, if you've ever seen The Secret, you know, I was just using a part of that formula, and it started to work for me. I said, you know what, I'm going to prove that I can be in the corporate world and I can hold a corporate position and, you know, management or upper management. And I would have this little whiteboard I put on my door, and it said, Closer to My Dreams. Drake came out with his song, a rip from another song that had came out. And I just remember, closer to my dreams. No, hey, can't sing, so don't judge me. But I would sing that every day, and I would look at it. Just that part of the song I would take, and I would just visualize me being in this new spot. And it took all my energy and attention off of all the bad stuff. Wasn't dealing with it yet, but it provided me an outlet, and I saw a lot of success. I was averaging 2 promotions a year. You know, I was moving up in the company very fastly. I had, you know, bought my house, so I'm here. I am. I'm living in a house now, and so things were going great. And then it all started to fall apart again. You know, like I said, like, we hit that next level where I think all that stuff's behind me, and now it was on a new level of things where, you know, it was like, okay, great. Now you're not doing bad stuff. Awesome. Thanks for catching up with the rest of the world. And I'd be really hard on myself like that. And then I was like, all right, so now what are we going to do about this whole, you have a house but no girlfriend, you have a job, but like, you're not really happy. Then it's like, why did I buy a house? Because everybody else does. So I started to realize, like, I'm not even being my own person. So I started to try to dive into that and figure out, like, what's going to make me happy. Well, in that process, bills are starting to get behind. Work is starting to pile up. And I got to a breaking point where I was working way too much because I was a yes man. And how can I please them, and overpromise and underdeliver. And it just got to be overwhelming. And I remember just quitting and saying, that's it. I can't do it anymore. And I remember feeling so empowered by quitting because I would never had the balls to do that. The only problem is in that I never not had a job. I've always had a job. So the idea of not having a job felt like such a failure to me that over the next couple of weeks, it started to chip away at my confidence and just drug me low. And I just went to this really low place. I went to like a telemarketing job. I was selling cruises, anything that I could get work with at that point, because my whole idea of like, I'm going to charge forward and I'll have a job didn't work out. It was the first time that I wasn't able to get a job right away. And it made me question, like, what am I really worth? You know, here I am, like, I finally figured out I'm worth something. And now I'm going out to the market, and it feels like to me, because I can't handle rejection, that I'm not worth anything. So then I started like getting real low, and I kept telling myself, I'm not going to go back to a call center job. And I tried so hard, and I finally did. And I remember finally going back to that call center job, having some hope of maybe getting into management. It didn't work out. And here I was, slowly watching the bills pile up again. So I'm going into debt, going into foreclosure, getting ready to lose my house, or the process is starting, and my whole world is crumbling again. So it's like, now I'm start telling myself, if you're a good person, you don't get anything for it. You're just gonna, you get more crap for it. So I started going the, pity party parade, right? And I just spiraled from there. But I kept one thing that I did do, it was really impactful. I started working out. I lost some weight, and that made me feel good and confident. But I hadn't figured out that I wanted to be a trainer yet, or that I wanted to be in fitness yet. I just lost 15 pounds. It was like, okay, this feels good. Let's get back into working out like I did when I was an athlete. Well, in the midst of all this, I'm figuring out at the job now that I've been at for almost a year. So I'm getting close to my 30s now. So we're past 25. I'm getting close to my 30s. And back up. Went a little too far. I'm still 25, and I'm realizing at this job, it's been 6 months, that I'm not going to be going anywhere in the position. I'm not going to be getting anything higher, and the bills are piling up, and I just felt like a failure again. So I remember a couple bad things happened with a flood in my house. The insurance company dropped the coverage. So now I had a house that was going into foreclosure, had no insurance, had no way to pay for the damages, my car went under, so I got to a bad car accident, and my back was hurt. I could barely dress myself. I was in battles with lawyers and trying to get to doctor's appointments, and all these things were going on, and I remember just feeling like there was no hope. I was alone, and this is where we talked about, and it brings us up to the last attempt, which I really resonated with me, and that's, when I realized that this is an issue. I am attempting suicide, and I'm someone who has attempted suicide before. At this point, I feel rock bottom. I'm drinking every day. All I do is drink, come home, play video games, and pass out. And I just remember I'm at this point where I'm just totally rock bottom. I drive out and said, that's it. I think I got dumped by my girlfriend at the time. I just all these things that felt like 10 things were just falling down on me. And I had no way to make more money. I'd given up trying anything else. And I just told myself there's no other way. You're at the point now where you're causing pain to your family again. You're causing pain to the people in your life again because you're being a burden. It's just better if I'm not here. So I grab my gun. I drive down the road. I go to a secluded area, a street people don't normally go down. I was probably within a 2-mile radius of my house. And I take the gun out and I say, that's it. I'm done. And I remember telling myself, don't be a punk. You've already decided, just do it. So I take it out, I cocked it back, put it in my mouth, and at that moment, as I was starting to squeeze on the trigger, a car drove by, and I looked up, and it was a child looking at me through the window, and I just remember seeing their face. I can imagine what they saw or interpreted. I know the way I interpreted. I saw me driving by in that car and realized it's not my fault, but it is. I have to take responsibility, but it's okay. And just thinking what am I about to do? And it just stopped me. And something switched in me. And it was I kind of yelling at myself, having this argument with myself, saying it's okay that this has happened. The things that have happened to you is not an excuse for what you're about to do. And you can still reclaim some of that innocence that you saw in that child driving by, because you can do whatever you want. It's never too late for anything. And you can be the person that you want to be. And that's the path you started to change. Remember why you started to do what you did. And that got a new fire in me, because I remember saying, it took for me to see the vision of the kid going by and looking back down at the gun and just taking in the whole surroundings of what was going on, where I was at, and what I just decided was a viable path to deal with what I was dealing with. And I said, no, I don't want this for myself. This is not how I want to go out. And at that point is when I really looked at it from, and admitted to myself, you're trying to kill yourself. So I couldn't even say that. I wouldn't have described it that way if someone said, what happened in the car that night? Oh, I just got upset. And I have a way to explain it away. That was the first time where I just looked at, you are trying to kill yourself. And that just sat with me immediately, because I'm like, that's not who you are. That is not who you are. Deep down inside, that is not who you are. And that, from that point on, it was even more aware, more conscious, and more willing to put myself out there, because I'd rather put myself out there than be dead and look at that alternative. And I just never looked back at that point. And I think what's different about my story is at that point, I still felt like I didn't have the support. I still felt like I was alone. But I decided that, because I was having that internal conflict, like, I just said a couple minutes ago, I'm worth it. And then it just reaffirmed, like, my life is worth something. So from that point on, it was, how can I better myself? How can I deal with the issues instead of just taking action and hoping things turn out okay? Like, how do I direct this ship somehow? And I ended up running into a guy who ran a boot camp at the place that I worked. And I just said, hey, I want to be a fly on the wall. I'm thinking about being a personal trainer. I realized that if I don't ever want to see anybody go through that pain where I was at. It's so painful. I don't think people realize how painful it can be. It hurts your soul. It's this feeling that you feel inside. It's not like any other pain you've ever felt. And my whole drive was, I would hate to see somebody go through what I just went through. And I can make some sort of difference. And I had always tried to get into some sort of job that helped. It just was never the right avenue. I worked for DCF for a long time. I worked in, I thought customer service. I'd be working with people. I could help them. I've worked in a medical field and never really found anything that was on that path. And so fast forward, I find this guy. He's like, yeah, go ahead. You can check out the boot camp and hang out for a little bit. And I found myself attracted to everybody working out in this group atmosphere and this motivation. I didn't know what motivation was at the time and never looked at motivation like that. And I just got plugged in, and I started to realize that when I did work on my fitness and I saw success, that I felt better. And I realized that progress is happiness, and that if I can find a way to keep progressing, that I can find happiness in that until I kind of figure this whole happiness thing out and find out what it's really about. Because we want to like this euphoric high. We think happiness is like, oh, you can't be up all the time. Happiness is like here. Not all the way up here. Right. Up here, orgasm. Imagine if you walked around having an orgasm all day. I mean, that sounds great, but I mean, maybe you want to. Okay. Right? So it's not realistic. Right. So, but here I am, like figuring out, like if I progress, I see results. That makes me happy. And so I plugged into that, and before I know it, I said, no, I want to become a personal trainer. And I lost more weight. I saw more success for myself. I saw how people were changing their lives and how doing something in fitness just translated into other parts of their life. And I noticed how I was more willing to put myself out there and like actually care about what I post on YouTube or Facebook and start feeding my mind things. I watched The Secret, and it like changed my life. I stopped worrying about what people thought and was more willing to put myself out there for my happiness, for me now, because a lot of things I was doing wasn't always for me. And, since then, it's been this journey still, and it's a continuing journey, right? Life, success is a journey, not a destination. I truly believe that. Right. And I started to figure out, what's my dream? And my dream was to, be able to have a soundboard to let this out, in hopes that I can impact people and help them to not get to that point and not just it be suicide or just any pain or any frustrations that they have. And it's snowballed to where I'm at now, which has been a great experience because you start letting all these good things into your life and you start having a different mindset. I started listening to Les Brown, Greg Plitt, Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, and even looking at here, I think I have another one I want to mention real quick. Dr. Carol Dweck was a great person to look into their work and her whole concept of the mindset. And I started looking at Napoleon Hill. And so all these things started to come into my world, and I became more open to life and the possibilities, and trying to get around people who are more like-minded and putting out that positive energy. And here we are today, just still looking for different ways to create an impact. And I picked up a lot of different things along the way. And, I always say this, from an Eric Thomas quote, the poorest man's not one without a penny. The poorest man's one without a dream.
Exactly.
Chase your dreams and take no days off. And that's basically what I've been doing, since then.
There's a couple of things, because I know you have a meeting to get to too, and I don't want to hold you from that, but I feel like we could do 2 hours of a show and still not get. So if you could go back to talk to, because this seems like the birth of Coach. This is where Coach is born now. And although I have a thing for bad boys, I think Coach is a lot nicer than the bad boy that you were. Yeah. But if you could go back and talk to PJ at 20, let's say 19, is there a plan for PJ?
I think if I could go back, or if I could say to anybody anything, I would probably want to touch on the things that helped me get over, and I still work on to this day, that help keep moving me forward. Because I think that goals are important and dreams are important, but action is where it's at. Without action, you don't have anything. And I think that you're going to find yourself running into walls with action if you're not right. So the things that help me, the biggest thing is forgiveness. And that'll tie back throughout the whole theme of everything that I've said, is I would never forgive myself or forgive others. And it wasn't until I started forgiving myself for the things that I did in my past that this weight would be uplifted. And I took on the concept of being unfuckwithable. No matter what anybody says to me, you can't fuck with me. I'm just going to do what I got to do, and I'm not going to let the no's stop me. I'm going to keep going until I have the yes. And something that's, I would say to my younger self would be, stop having expectations for everybody. Do things without the expectations. Nobody owes you anything. And that's something that has really helped me propel and move forward. Because, I always was expecting people to be, well, I do this, why don't you? And that failure, rejection, or whatever, just started becoming this thing that consumed me. And I stopped being a people pleaser. I stopped pouring my energy into negative people. I stopped projecting those expectations and insecurities that I had onto other people. And we still do that, but you're more self-aware of it. You try to find a way to curb it. And to realize that you are worth it. You are enough. Right. If you can take that concept and run with it, that you are enough, it starts to bring into focus. Selfish sometimes gets a bad rap. It's okay to be selfish. You can't help other people if you can't help yourself.
Exactly.
Sometimes that means being a little selfish and maybe going against the grain of what everybody, wants you to do. Yeah. And stop aiming for perfection. Acceptance and gratitude will be the last two things that I lead with, is be grateful for the things that you have now. Because if you can't be grateful for wherever you're at, no matter how bad it is, if you can't be grateful for something now, you won't be able to handle success when you get it in the future.
Cool. Well, one of the traditions of my show is to leave some words of wisdom for folks listening. And it's an open range, whatever you want to say. What words of wisdom do you want to throw our way?
I would say when it comes, and I want to leave it with this because, a big thing was just kind of talking about bringing awareness to suicide. And I think that we touched on one story, and I think that everyone's feelings with that can be so different. You look at PTSD, veterans and what they go through. At the end of the day, what I would say is don't be silent. Say something to somebody and have faith that things can be better. I'll never make a promise because it's really up to you on how you want your future to go. But I would say that don't be silent. Say something. Talk to somebody. I mean, you look at Chris Cornell, Robin Williams, and just recently Chester Bennington in the news with suicide. Suicide affects everybody. It doesn't matter culture, race, religion. Lives matter, period. So if you know somebody or you think somebody is in that situation, talk to them. Reach out. You ask for help. How can you help that person? Just don't be silent. I won't claim to be an expert. What I will say is the key to breaking that loneliness is telling somebody. That starts the bridge. And if you can do that, you know, that could lead into a better place. So I'll just leave it with that. Don't be silent. No matter what happens, just keep going.
So and you kind of answered the question, but I don't want, I'm so determined to get, I know. The answer that I want. And I think it's more of a self-motivation because you actually motivated me with a lot of things that you just said. We kind of talked a little bit yesterday about the similarities in our lives and just kind of how we connected. I've had a lot of near death, a lot of health issues anyway. I'm getting emotional. And they've always told me there's a plan for you. There's a plan. And there's times when I sit down and I go, gee, God, like, can't you just deliver the message a little clearer? Like, can we just burn a bush or part the seas? Like, does it have to be this difficult? Have you had that moment? And do you have an idea of what your plan in life is?
I think where I'm at now with my plan in life is to continue to help. And that's as simple as that sounds. It's not very, I look at it as there's a lot of paths I can go. The one thing that I have been more susceptible to or open to is that those signs are very subtle. And it happens in the smallest of ways. You know, the impact that I thought I was going to create was I thought, I'm literally going to sit down 500 people, help them lose weight, and like it's going to be this big grand story. And it's not always that. Sometimes it's even subtler than what you realize. And it's just by being the change that you want to see in the world and not being afraid to lead that path with a torch, holding it high, knowing you might drop it a couple times, and you stay strong and you stay on the path. The most powerful thing that I've gotten from a client was not weight loss. It wasn't inches off the waist. It wasn't losing body fat. It was someone thanking me for improving the quality of life that they thought they weren't going to be able to reclaim back. Being able to stay, plugged in with their nieces and nephews and running around and seeing life in a whole nother aspect where the weight didn't even matter anymore. The image and that was still important to them, but the main thing was just seeing that impact. And then you realize that, I don't necessarily have to come in touch with every single person that I impact. I might be impacting people when I share something. I might be impacting people when I tell something about a story or make a post or put a motivational quote, or just by consistently being here in this parking lot, being here for people and connecting with my members and asking them what's going on in their lives and offering assistance and advice or getting them plugged in with more people who can help. It's just this big network. I love networking, but not for the reason that other people like networking, I think. I like to network because you get to talk to all these people in different experiences and realize we really can help each other out. It's not that we're holding each other's hands across the street, but we all have value. And I think that where I'm heading is I want to helping people and finding a way where I can continue to add value and show people that they can do the same.
Cool. Well, you're out in Florida, so if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
They can find me at 2820 Doyle Road, Deltona, Florida. We have Just Keep Going Fitness boot camp classes out there. or you can call me at 321-345-8184. That is my business number, so you can get us there. Visit us on Facebook, Just Keep Going Fitness. Instagram, the same, Just Keep Going Fitness. And Tumblr at PJ Smash 007. So any of those routes, you can plug in, see what we're doing, get free workouts, get tips. I'll put motivational pieces up there. It's just about being around people who are like-minded, and what we do is we work on our fitness, and by doing that, it translates into everything else. I'm telling you, it's a powerful thing. But if you want to come catch me, come out here in Deltona, and you'll see our class times and hours and all that on the website. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out.
And I'll post all that on our website so people can check that out. I know you have to go, and so I'm going to let you go to your meeting, but I want to invite you to come back on the show. I think there's so much more direction we can go, and there's so much stuff that we left out that I really would love to tap into. Will you come back at another time when you get a chance?
I would be honored to come back.
Cool. And then we go to Florida often, so hopefully we'll be in Florida at some point and we'll meet you in person. That would be pretty awesome.
I think that'd be awesome. We'll get the cameras out and everything.
Yes. That'll be the next one. Plus, I could use a little muscle myself, so see, like.
Yeah, we'll get you in the gym, get you working out, bring you over to the park, get you doing a boot camp workout.
Oh! All right. Don't go yet. Let me just say goodbye, everybody. For everybody listening, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It's been an amazing show, and Coach is going to come back and visit again. Oh, and he'll be back on the show. I'll have him back. For now, I want to thank my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his support. Please follow us at abnormalentertainment.com. Check out all the shows there. You can check me out at Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Lil Mexican, LILMESICAN. You want to be on the show? Drop me a line. Send me an email at danielggarza@hotmail.com, DANIELGGARZA@hotmail.com. Just put podcast on the subject so I'll know where you're coming from. Or drop me a message on any of the other social media. You can find me everywhere. For now, I want to thank Coach for being on the show. Coach, thank you so much, man. It's been awesome.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
And this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
Yeah. One more time before we turn the lights out, ladies and gentlemen.
Closer to my dreams.
Lights about to go down. Curtains about to close, but
I feel it in my
I want y'all to enjoy yourself on the way out. Yeah, man.
I said I'm getting higher, yeah,
Yeah, man.
and closer to my dreams. Whoa, 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 yeah. Sometimes it feels like I'll never move on. Closer to my dreams.
You know what it is, man. It's your boy. DRAKKE. I'm almost there. Closer to my dreams. Yeah.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Mexican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.